Someone asks you how your weekend was, and something inside you just deflates. Not because the weekend was bad, not because you dislike the person asking, but because you can already see the whole conversation mapped out in front of you, like a script everyone already knows. Good, busy. Yours? Yeah, same. And then you both nod and look at your phones, or the ceiling, or literally anywhere else. And the whole exchange leaves you feeling somehow more alone than if you'd said nothing at all. Sound familiar? Because if it does, you are not antisocial, you are not difficult, you are not broken. You just have a brain that is wired to find shallow conversational water genuinely uncomfortable, and there is a fascinating amount of psychology behind exactly why that is. Today we're going inside the minds of people who hate small talk, not to fix them, but to understand what's actually going on, because it's more interesting, more nuanced, and more scientifically layered than most people realize. Let's start with what small talk actually is, because the name itself is almost accidentally honest. Small. It's right there in the label. And for people who can't stand it, that smallness isn't just a descriptor, it's an indictment. Small talk is, by design, safe. It's conversational territory where nothing real can happen because nothing real is allowed to happen. The weather, the weekend, the traffic. These are topics engineered specifically to fill silence without revealing anything about the person filling it. And for a certain type of mind, that is not conversation. That is performance. Here's the psychological mechanism underneath this. Research from psychologist Matthias Mehl at the University of Arizona found something remarkable when he recorded the daily conversations of hundreds of people. He found that people who engaged in more substantive conversations, deeper exchanges about ideas, feelings, and meaning, reported significantly higher levels of well-being and life satisfaction than those who spent more time in small talk. More depth, more happiness. The data made a very clear case, and for people who hate small talk, their gut already knew this. The discomfort they feel in shallow conversation isn't irrational irritability. It's a signal from a brain that has learned, sometimes without ever being told explicitly, that depth is where meaning lives. But let's go even deeper than satisfaction scores. Because the aversion to small talk is also, for many people, fundamentally a sensory and cognitive experience. Think about what your brain is doing during small talk. It's not actually at rest. It's working, scanning for tone, managing social expectations, calculating appropriate responses, monitoring the other person's reactions, maintaining the performance of engagement while simultaneously feeling none. It is, in neurological terms, a lot of cognitive overhead for very little return. The brain is running an expensive program that produces almost nothing of value. And for people who are already high in what psychologists call need for cognition, the genuine drive to think deeply and engage with complex ideas, that cost-to-reward ratio is deeply unsatisfying in a way they feel in their bodies, not just their preferences. Now here's something that surprises people. The dislike of small talk has very little to do with disliking people. This is the part that gets misread constantly, by the people who hate small talk and by the people around them. Because from the outside it can look like coldness, like someone who is closed off or arrogant or just not a people person. And that reading is almost always wrong. People who hate small talk are frequently among the most intensely curious, most genuinely engaged, most deeply empathetic people in any room. They don't want less connection. They want more of it. Real connection. They are not retreating from people. They are waiting, sometimes impatiently, sometimes a little desperately, for the conversation to become something worth having. Think of it this way. Imagine you're starving and someone hands you a single cracker. You're not ungrateful for the cracker. You understand the cracker's function. But the cracker is not a meal. And if someone then mistakes your hunger for ingratitude or labels you difficult for wanting actual food, something feels fundamentally unjust about that. That is precisely the experience of a small talk hater at a party, at a networking event, at an office kitchen. The crackers are everywhere. The meal is nowhere. And the hunger is real. Psychologists have identified that people who strongly prefer deep conversation over small talk tend to score higher on certain personality dimensions, particularly openness to experience, which encompasses intellectual curiosity, imaginative thinking, and a genuine appetite for ideas. They also frequently lean toward introversion, not in the sense of being shy, but in the technical psychological sense of finding external stimulation cognitively draining faster than others. The combination of high openness and introversion creates a specific type of mind that is essentially allergic to surface. It craves texture, it craves complexity, and small talk, by design, has none. There's also something worth saying about authenticity. For many people who hate small talk, the issue isn't just that it's boring, it's that it feels dishonest. Real conversation, the kind they actually want to have, requires a certain degree of vulnerability. It requires showing something true about yourself and allowing the other person to do the same. Small talk actively prohibits that. It maintains a kind of social fiction where everyone agrees implicitly to stay in the shallow end. And for people with a strong need for authenticity, people who find the gap between the social mask and the real self genuinely uncomfortable, that agreement feels like a small but persistent betrayal of something important. There is research from the field of self-determination theory, developed by Edward Deci and Richard Ryan, that speaks directly to this. It suggests that human beings have a fundamental psychological need for authentic self-expression, the need to act in alignment with their true values and feelings, rather than performing a social role. When that need is consistently unmet, well-being suffers. For people who hate small talk, every forced cheerful exchange about the weekend is, in a small way, a denial of that need. Add those up across a day, a week, a social season, and you start to understand why these people often come home from parties feeling not energized or even neutral, but somehow depleted and faintly hollowed out. And yet there is something worth sitting with here, because the full picture is more complex than small talk bad, deep talk good. Because small talk does serve a real function. It is the social scaffolding through which trust gets built slowly, safely, over time. The weather conversation isn't really about the weather. It's a ritual that says, I see you, and I'm not a threat. For most people, it's a bridge. The problem for small talk haters isn't that the bridge exists. It's that they want to run across it as fast as humanly possible and get to the other side. The patience required to walk it at the expected pace can feel almost physically impossible. Knowing this is actually useful, because it reframes the challenge from, I hate people and people hate me, to, my brain moves fast and I need to learn to pace it. It shifts the internal story from pathology to preference. And that shift matters, because people who understand their own wiring can work with it rather than against it. They can learn to see the brief, shallow exchange not as the whole meal, but as the entrance to the restaurant. They can find the one person at the party who also seems to be enduring the crackers and waiting for something real. They can give themselves permission to steer a conversation gently and curiously toward depth, which, it turns out, most people welcome enormously once someone brave enough actually opens the door. So here is what I want to leave you with. If you hate small talk, that aversion is not a character flaw. It's not social anxiety misinterpreted, and it's not arrogance misread. It is a specific, psychologically coherent response from a mind that is hungry for something real. A mind that values depth, authenticity, and genuine connection above the comforting rituals of surface. That hunger is actually a beautiful thing, even when it makes office parties genuinely excruciating. The question worth sitting with, and I'd love to hear your answer in the comments, is this. What is the best real conversation you have ever had? Because I have a feeling that remembering it will tell you everything about who you actually are. And if you want to keep exploring the hidden architecture of what makes certain minds tick the way they do, there's a lot more coming. See you in the next one.